If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. I want to talk to you today about a very difficult topic, and it's one that I've discussed before, but it certainly requires more discussion and illumination, and it's the topic of trauma bonding. And specifically today, I want to talk with you about what the trauma bond does to you and your thoughts and your psyche, your emotional duress, because it's so important for you to recognize that when you've been bonded with a malignant narcissist, inevitably that's who that person would be, it takes such a toll on you that you begin to wonder, is there something really wrong and deficient about me? That's part of what trauma bonding, of course, does. And I'm here to tell you, no. You have to understand that the problem that happens with trauma bonding is you're with a very pathological person who themselves is very disturbed and dysregulated. They're the problem. They want you to think you're the problem, and so it's so necessary for you to see what they do to you so that you can recognize it's more about them than it is about you, and we need to adjust some of the thoughts and feelings that you carry about yourself. Now, before we get into that, and I'm actually going to read to you quite a number of comments that I've received from people who have been in trauma bonds. But let's remind ourselves what we're talking about when we use that term trauma bonding. Basically, the person who's been trauma bonded feels very self-limited. They're mentally and emotionally exhausted, and they feel very unworthy, specifically because of an ongoing toxic relationship with a hyper-controlling narcissist, a master manipulator. And one of the things that we know about trauma bonding is that as time passes, the recipient of that toxicity begins feeling weaker and weaker relative to the narcissist. And of course, the giver of the toxicity, the narcissist, becomes more and more diabolical. By the way, do you understand the meaning of the word diabolical? We also have diablo in other languages, but it comes from a Latin root word that just means the devil. It's evil. And it's truly evil when a narcissist in their malignant mannerism says, I need to make sure you know who's in charge around here. They grind you into the ground. They want you to have little to no belief in yourself because they're going to fill you with them. And so the narcissist demands your subjugation. They demand your significance, and over time, when you've been around someone that long, you become so habituated to the game that they go to. You're trying to seek peace and get rid of conflict, that you feel that if you do leave, then you're being disloyal, or you're wrong, or somehow or another you're the impossible one. That's the bond that happens. You stay stuck to them because the malignant narcissist lets you know, if you do something away from me, then that means there's something terrible about you. You need to stay underneath my subjection. Now, I have a whole list here that I just sat down at my desk and I wrote it out. And these are comments that I've received from viewers such as yourself and from other individuals that I've spoken with. And I want to read these to you. And as I do, I want you to see if you can identify with some or maybe even all of these kind of comments, because this is what happens to a decent person when they have been trauma bonded to a narcissist, and inevitably a malignant narcissist. Here we go. I've heard or read comments like this. I totally lost myself. I can't tell you how hard I've tried to hold the relationship together. I constantly felt it was my job to make peace. Nothing, and I mean nothing, ever satisfied that person. I had to choose to be a yes person or face serious wrath. I wonder how many of you have worried about that one. There was lots of verbal abuse and constant shame. You know what that's like? After all of the controlling demands, I would be left wondering, who am I and how in the hell did I get here? I had to comply with a capital C to that person, and I hated it. My worth, my self-respect weren't just stolen, they were trampled upon. To this day, I struggle with doubt and profound grief. These are words from people who've been in trauma bonds. I feel like damaged goods. Will I ever be accepted or lovable again? I was told repeatedly that if I left, it will not end well for you. I felt so alone. I had to get away from the toxic fumes, but I felt terrified. You know, I read through these kind of comments, and there are more, and I know that many of you can recall some or add to the list here. But I read through comments like this, and I'm thinking, yeah, this is what happens. This is what trauma bonding does to a decent person. That narcissist who's got such a strong control agenda and has somehow or another convinced himself or herself that it's a reasonable thing to grind you into the ground. They give you so many messages and there are so many experiences where they rob you of your own decency that this is what happens to an otherwise very decent kind of an individual. And I want you to understand that if you've been on the receiving end of this, you don't have to stay. Or, we call it trauma bonding. The narcissist wants to bond to you, but it really is okay for you to say, no, I can't do this. And so I want to give you a few thoughts here. If you've been associated with a narcissist who has tried to bond you to them through this trauma and toxicity, and I want to see if we can figure out how you can get away from that. And the first thing that I want you to recognize is this, and that is, I want you to drop any presumption that you can and should protect the narcissist. Let's keep in mind, this is a very disordered person. This is somebody that's very pathological, and you don't have to make excuses on that person's behalf anymore. I want you to remember that. Another thought that I hope that you can hold on to is, drop the notion that you're duty bound to a narcissist. That notion was drilled into you by somebody who used what I call, they made heavy use of what I call imperative thinking, imperative communication. And basically that means you must, you have to, you've got to, you're obliged. There's a certain agenda and you cannot deviate from the agenda. That's a wrong notion. And when they came at you with that heavy imperative, they were speaking falsely. I hope you remember that. Another thing that I'm hoping you can remember, and that is, it's necessary for you to claim your freedom. See, one of the first tasks that a malignant narcissist wants to do to keep you bonded to them is they want to take away your notion that says, I get to choose for myself. But the fact is, that is a true statement. You do get to choose for yourself. And you may have to kind of reinforce that notion over and over. You get to decide what defines you, what traits you want to have most predominant in the way that you engage with people. And in fact, if you want to make a list and write it out, here are the traits that I want to have as I define who I am, I think that would be a great idea. And then I attach those traits to specific circumstances. That would be a good journaling kind of exercise for you. You get to decide what your priorities are and what your preferences are. And you don't have to apologize for you being you. The narcissist wanted you to get rid or to forget about your freedom to choose. Hold on to that one. Remember, you're free. You get to choose. Now, in addition, I do think it's very necessary when you've been bonded to a malignant narcissist that it would be a good idea If you can get a therapist that can help you work that through, or if that is not available to you, get a good support group or a friend or a confidant. It's good to hear from someone else the words, I love you. I care about you. You matter. In my eyes, you're a respected person. I hope that you can find that person. One of the things that tends to happen when you've been in a trauma bond is that you have been isolated. Don't isolate. Avail yourself to people who know how to bring the best out of you. And then finally, we can say, as you try to get away from the bonds of that malignant narcissist, be patient with yourself. There are going to be times when you're going to start defending yourself unnecessarily or explaining yourself way beyond what is necessary, and your friends are going to say, "Hey, you don't need to explain. You don't need to apologize," and all. It's like, yeah, I've kind of gotten used to it. Some of the old habits may die hard, but I'm hoping you can use new habits, and it starts with you loving yourself and respecting yourself and living with your own sense of good intentions leading the way. So the red flags that we're going to have that says that a person has been pulled into a trauma bond is that there's a high controlled relationship. It tends to lead to a lot of conflict and strain and tension, very strong opinions. That person will not adjust their thoughts. And I hope that as you're able to see the indicators of trauma bonding, you can decide, you know what, like I say, I am not obliged to that anymore. And I'm going to stand in self-respect because that's what I deserve. And to that malignant narcissist, we're going to say, you need to be in my rearview mirror. I don't need input from you, period. Now, there's so much that needs to be addressed when we're talking about trauma bonding, but I hope that this talk that I'm giving to you can let you know like I said, the reason I wanted to read these comments, there are other people that have been through this with you. You're not alone. But there are also people who've been able to recover. And the reason that I put these videos out there is to help you in that recovery process. If you've not already subscribed, I would encourage you to do so. You've heard me mention about therapy. I strongly encourage therapy. I mean, I'm a therapist myself, so I've been referring people to therapists my entire adult life. We have a sponsor who has a link below that will take you to an entire team of licensed professional therapists that you could choose from that can help you through this. And if it's at all possible, I would encourage you to seek that out. In addition, I have courses. And these courses, video courses, multiple videos, written material, and questions can walk you through finding boundaries and finding good relationship skills. And I would encourage you to avail yourself to those. I have my books and other resources below. I hope you hear my heart today. It makes me cringe when I know that there are some very immature and overbearing and condescending people who think that it's their job to get inside your brain and rearrange it to their nefarious desires. Don't let that happen. I hope that you can break free, and I hope that you decide that you deserve respect, starting with you respecting yourself. And in doing so, you can break away from that unnecessary bond that they attempted to create with you. Because ultimately, I want you to be a person of peace.